So I hope everybody in the room fared well. Steve Hayes is the CEO of Visit St. Pete Clearwater. Been there a couple of years now, right, Steve?
Oh no, December will be a year.
Oh, that's right, December. Oh my gosh, yeah. So came from the Panhandle, and I was actually a board member on the TDC Tourist Development Council. And from a governmental standpoint, it really is an interesting dynamic board, as I'm sure Steve knows, with hoteliers and the tourism industry, and then some government officials on there. It's definitely an eclectic mix. I think you have 15 board members. Is that right, Steve?
12.
12, yeah. So interesting perspective in tourism. I love the analytics of it, but Steve and I were emailing back and forth last night a little bit about, do we do this, do we not? And so we figured, what the heck, I'm going to go ahead and record it anyway. Most people are probably working from home, so I'll turn it over to Steve and hear what we got going on in the tourism industry and how it's affecting business.
Great, and thank you for that. Enjoyed the conversation on the front end as well. And good morning, everybody. All right, I'm going to tee up my screen to share. It's amazing how we all get used to it. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Awesome. So as I was working on this last night, as usual, I probably committed on the number of slides. So if I happen to go through some very quickly, I'm being very respectful of time, but hopefully go through and get a couple of points across related to tourism, where it is, and really kind of what's happened, since, with the pandemic. I think the first thing to start off with is to really look at the value of tourism as we saw it and if you look at 19. So in 2018 and 2019, looking at the number of visitors, the direct spending, economic impact, payroll, what you don't see on there would be jobs. And so it's a critical element of Pinellas County. When you look at the fact that you've got direct spending by visitors at almost $5.6 billion, not million, billion dollars, that's what's at stake with our industry. And 2019, again, was another record year for Pinellas County. Even though we were down 1.6% in visitors, that mainly came through on the day visitor versus the overnight visitor. And the difference between those two is the overnight spends more than our day visitor does. When I got here in December, so you were correct. I mean, I've been here a short period of time. So in my first 90 days, we had ad campaigns running in New York, Toronto, Atlanta, Chicago. We were humming along perfectly. In fact, we were on pace again to have another record year. This kind of shows you some things we were doing up in Toronto. Just gives you a little bit idea of the messaging that we had out there. Again, talking about all the great attributes of what was happening here in Pinellas County. Then this thing happened. And all I got to tell you is I call it my 90-day review, but basically at my first 90 days, I had a meeting and Steve, love what's happening, love what you're doing, the whole bit. Oh, by the way, we're shutting down the county tomorrow. And it was like, whoa, and talk about a learning curve and really what was going to happen with the tourism industry. And again, it impacted businesses everywhere. So it's not unique to travel. But when you're in an economy that is very dependent upon the tourism, then you start to see those results. And the first thing I'm going to look at is this looks at monthly average occupancy in the county. And I've got it from March to present. And so you can see where we were in March of 2019 versus the same time period in 2020. And and actually the beginning of March, we were, and I'll show you another slide that kind of shows this, but we were actually doing good. It was halfway through when everything started to shut down. And then you hit the bottom down in April, and then you see the climb back up into June, and then you see a little bit of that dip in July and August, and then you see the climb back up. And so occupancy is a measure of number of people that are coming into our communities. All right, hopefully my cat doesn't photobomb us. All right, there we go. So now in looking at this shows daily occupancy. And I think, again, you can see beginning of March, this is spring break. We were doing good compared to 2019. And then you see this drop just as soon as the beaches closed and you started seeing shutdowns everywhere, then that's where this drop came off. I think I think it was around the 27th of March where we had our lowest occupancy in terms of business. And then you start to see the climb back up. And then when you get right up into here is when the beaches reopened. And then you get here, you get into Memorial Day. And again, you can kind of, see what's happening. We did see that correlation between what was happening in terms of cases of the virus in the community, what was and what was reported in the media. So as soon as the media would say Florida's a hot zone, you would get the folks that said, yeah, we're not going, we don't feel comfortable in coming to the destination. Room revenue is, again, this starts to get back to the spend in the market. And you can see in March that room revenue was almost down 50%. And that was considering that half the month we were going into shutdown mode. The other half, we were doing good. But the real drop came in April. We were almost down 90% in room revenue. Again, you saw this increase up until June, and then a little bit of that decrease. The best month so far has been September. And part of that is in 2019, we had an event here in not in Pinellas County, but in Florida that hurt folks traveling because they didn't want to be anywhere near a storm. And if you remember, that was Dorian. And so there was a lot of media out there about the storm and was it going to be a Cat 5, a Cat 4? Is it coming across the state? Is it going up the state? And so and it was right around Labor Day. And so we did very well. So that, I guess if we took that number out of the equation, we would still be down in this area here. And this is what we were for the month of October. When we go through and look at tourist development tax collections, the black line represents 2020. And you can see for our fiscal year starts October 1. So you can see October through February where we were against the 3 previous years. And again, this is a combination of getting that TDT, the spend on the lodging is a combination of not only people in the market, but what they're paying for those rooms. You see the drop in March, which again, we had a half of a good month and then the half where we started the shutdown and then really down to April. And to give you an idea, we're up to close to $9 million in March, and we didn't even make $5 million in this year. And in April, that number drops all the way down to less than $1 million. You start to see the climb back up, and now you can see we're following the same pattern of what we've had in the past, although there is narrowing right here toward the end, of the collections being roughly where they're at. Interestingly enough, is in April, we were asked to kind of forecast where we thought things might go. And so based on some national information, put together a forecast and really looking at TDT collections as the main item. And interestingly enough, thank God I am not a forecaster, because I went through and working with the county, gave them a set of numbers. They went through and looked at it, said, at the end of the year, if we go through and collect 37 million compared to 62 million, we would be doing good. And so we reduced our spending. Because again, a lot of things weren't happening, things we chose not to do, and to get us to that 37 million benchmark. Based on the numbers that came in for August, October for September business, we'll end the year at 48 million.
Wow.
Now, now I'm going to say, woohoo, we're going to celebrate that. It's still below where we're at, but given where we were, I think it's great that, that we got that far. So I've given up on my career in forecasting unless I go through and only forecast, and my forecasts are on the bad side and we outperform it. So that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say with that. When I go through just some, I think it's for, to have an understanding of what's happening out there with travelers, because that leads us into where we're going and what we're doing. And so part of this is, there's an organization called Destination Analyst. They are a research company. And actually, that is who does our research. But they started very early on a weekly basis, reaching out to travelers with series of questions so that we better understood what their mindset was, what were they looking at, what were they feeling. So in this case, this was data that was collected in July of 2020, and it says, name what is one word that best describes how you feel about travel right now. So keep in mind, in July, even in Florida, we still had a high number of cases. And, unsafe, scared, cautious are the three biggest words that they were using related to travel. And that's kind of what we were seeing, is people were not wanting to travel because of that. Well, am I going to get, coronavirus? Am I going to be safe in where I'm going? Is that the best place to go? And I think people were still, one of the words being deleted from the dictionary, hunkered down, so we can get rid of that word going forward.
Just real quick to that point, and we were talking before we started about travel, and I do cruises and things like that, and I wasn't scared, and I wasn't worried about catching it as much as, and I don't know if you're feeling this, and I'm going to Cancun next week, but is my experience going to be a good experience? With cruises, you can't get off of the boats unless you take a thing. Am I wearing the mask, everywhere? I don't know what it'll be like in Cancun, but are you seeing some of that it's really their perception of the experience they're going to have?
Are you going through and reading my presentation ahead of time?
No.
So no, that is a great point. Again, if I am a family, if I'm a couple, if I'm an individual I don't care who, you've saved up your money to make a trip, and all of a sudden now you're going to say, am I going to get the best value? Am I going to get that true experience? And I'll show you how that comes into play. This here is data from the end of September. So it says when it comes to getting back out on traveling again, what best describes your current state of mind? And then blue is I'm ready to travel and not ready to travel. And you can see here, as we've gone through the fall, is that again, there was an increase of I'm not ready for travel. and then it's kind of decreased and it's gone back up. And so we kind of watch this carefully. Right now, I am traveling or ready to travel with no hesitations, roughly about 25%. And roughly about 50% said I need a little more time to be ready, or a lot more time. And I'll kind of show you what that timing is. The perceived safety, in other words, if I'm going to travel, am I going to be safe? And I think in the past we use safe in a whole other different connotation than today. And really the safe is more along the lines of being protected. Like where I would not go through and get the coronavirus. So you can see the percentage of those that are saying I would feel unsafe or very unsafe is going lower, which is good. That's I think the travelers becoming more educated, as well as and I'll show you some other slides too, how the communities go through and are making them feel safe. They're then willing to go out and travel. Now, this one may be kind of hard to read on computer screens, but this is how safe would you feel doing these type of activities? So traveling on a cruise, and these are I'm somewhat unsafe or very unsafe. So traveling on a cruise line is the big loser. And roughly about 75% said they would feel somewhat unsafe or very unsafe, which is why you're probably not seeing cruise lines going at this point. At the very bottom, being very safe, again, taking a road trip, a non-team outdoor recreation, going shopping, visiting friends and relatives, staying in a hotel, dining in a restaurant, visiting an amusement park or outdoor attraction, museum or indoor attraction. So again, they're feeling safe in those environments. Now, what's interesting is in an outdoor amusement park, is you're still seeing over in Orlando, they're not getting nearly the crowds, even though they're still practicing a lot of your physical distancing and other measures. They're not getting the crowds over there. In fact, I think I read the other day that Busch Gardens for the quarter was down like 80% from the previous year. And I know Disney has had additional changes as well. So again, that's what's going through and happening in that market. When you look at the type of fall trips, you go through small town villages, rural destinations. Cities and metropolitan areas are still there, but beach destination resorts are very high. Regional parks, recreation areas, U.S. national parks. Again, this was looking at fall trips. The great part is, I think for us as an overall, as in Pinellas, covers the beach destination area as well as the city metropolitan area, and even some of the small town and the rural destination. Because I think, especially when you get into some areas of Pinellas County, you'll have that as well. So we're not dependent upon one of the markets. We really have a lot of that to showcase. And then what are you likely to do while traveling? Dining out, and I can attest when, and I don't know if it's a matter of my age, but our family took a trip up to North Carolina this fall to go visit my two brothers. We spent more time looking for places to eat and planning our days around our food than we did anything else. I mean, we researched to death the restaurants and made sure that we were in line, wherever we needed to go. But when it came time to doing an activity, like going to a museum or going to outdoor attraction or something like that, we just kind of did it on the fly. But the food, that was the focal point. And I think you see that here, and people feel like they can go through and do that safely. This one is, and this one here again is from July. I'm planning to avoid all travel until this situation blows over. Well, I don't think it's going to blow over. And I think it's going to be around. It's how we end up adapting to this. But 58.5% strongly agree or agree with that that statement. I wanted to go through, and there were two new words that have come out recently. One is called schoolcations and workcations. Now, I'm sure that in the past, folks have gotten out of school early because, hey, I want to take the kids and go on a trip and we got to leave a day early. But if, and our daughter's a second grade teacher, and she'll have kids that, they're doing things virtually, and, all of a sudden, she has a feeling that they're not at home anymore. But basically they can travel. And so is there the opportunity to say, you know what, you can come here, you can still get your schoolwork done, but you can do it, instead of being in school, you're there from 9 to 3 or whatever your session is. And after that, you get to have fun. So you have that element. The other one is work related. So I imagine if I could see everybody that's on the call and we were able to raise our hand and say, we're working remotely. You could, with the internet, you can work remotely anywhere. And so if you have to get in on a call, you can go through and do that, or you have to participate, where before maybe it wasn't as accepted. And I think it is now. So there's two new words to add to the dictionary, and we'll get rid of hunkered down and some of those other words. This one really gets into more about a destination managing the coronavirus situation, and how likely would this affect your interest in visiting a destination in a 6-month period immediately after the situation's resolved. And again, from the consumer standpoint, and this is at the end of July, so I think I just haven't seen updated information here, is this really comes into play is they want to make sure that they are going through and managing what's happening in the destination related to the coronavirus. Because again, people are looking for what's happening and can I feel safe in going to that destination. This goes to the question, if I were to travel now for leisure, I would not be able to fully enjoy it. And right now, 60%, almost 61% strongly agree or agree with that statement. So as an example, my brother was supposed to come visit over July. He called us up one day about 3 weeks out and said, hey, he and his wife are going to come down and visit. They already booked their hotel. They booked their airline ticket. Called me 3 days before they're supposed to come. And he said, yeah, we're not going to come. And I'm like, well, why? And he said, because all the things we expected from where we were going to stay, they're not doing. And he said, I'd much rather save my money and then come down when they're able to go through and do that. And so and I don't disagree with that. People work hard for their money and they want to certainly enjoy that experience, especially if they take one trip a year. And so this goes back, again, the whole thing about enjoying your travel right now. And this was again from the end of July. This one has to deal with meetings and events. And again, while Pinellas is very much more leisure oriented, we do have several properties that handle meetings, small meetings to medium meetings. And that part of the industry has been very impacted. And my wife also works on the meeting planning side. So I hear from her on what her customers are saying. And you're looking, and what you're seeing here is you're looking at probably second and third quarter of next year before a lot of that begins to come back. And so, you know, whether it's I'm moving my business where I was going to have a fall meeting, it moved to the winter, which moved to the spring, because they're not sure of what they're, you know, as the client, what they're able to do. I think from a business standpoint as well, there's concern that if I am XYZ company and I have a certain conference and one of my attendees gets the virus, am I liable? Then, you know, do I have to pay if they've got a quarantine in that market? Are there health concerns? So there's a business element to that as well. And this one really looks at travel plans, the influence of face mask requirements on destination choices. And again, this was another group here that does the studies, and this was from August. I will visit destinations that require the use of face masks in public or more likely. So here you're looking at almost 51% of this is what consumers what consumers are saying. So again, I think what's been done here in Pinellas County has helped because it shows that we have, as a community, our citizens are concerned, and this is what we're doing, and we're also concerned for our visitors that are coming in. I'm going to touch upon that here in a minute. In working with our ad agency, they also go out and they look at travel sentiment. And here are 5 things that they're going through that they're saying, and this was as of last week. They said that travel continues to make its comeback. Roadside small town hotels are faring best, whereas your urban hotels are not. And again, part of it is people are out traveling by car versus by air. And then when you look at number 2 is while holiday travel currently looks nebulous, what I think is going to happen is somebody's going to make a decision. Hey, I think everybody's okay. Let's go. And a week out, 2 weeks out, you're going to see people making plans where right now, typically, you already have that done. I can tell you right now, and looking at our booking window, from the moment somebody says, I booked my trip to the time I walk in the door of that destination is less than 21 days.
Wow.
And I mean, 3 weeks. You know, I can't do that. I mean, that's, you know, but that's just my nature. But that's what we've gotten to, and that is so different than what we've seen in the past.
Mine was about 10. I booked it Monday and I leave next Thursday. So
yeah. And it's based on what people are hearing and what people are seeing. Here's an interesting stat here. So number 4 was for some jet setters' desire for escape and strong travel itch pushed them to fulfill travel cravings through frivolous flights. There was a flight, and I believe it was in Australia, that took off from Sydney, flew for 7 hours and landed at Sydney and didn't go anywhere. Didn't land any other place. But they basically flew around. And in this case, they got to see Australia, the coastline. I mean, all this. I'm thinking, so I like to fly. I don't know if that's exactly what I would do. But if people want to feel like they're getting away, you know, there is an opportunity. Oh, and by the way, the flight was sold out.
Wow.
So, you know, again, it's just how are people adapting to what's happening within the travel industry. From a marketing approach, and am I doing okay on time?
Yeah, you're good. Yep.
Okay. From a marketing approach, really, so this has been probably the strangest. Having been in this business, so before I was up in the Panhandle, I was over in Tampa, and I was over there 25 years. So over in Tampa, I was there when we went through 9/11. I was there. We went through the financial crash of 08 and 09. And then I go up to the Panhandle and I deal with BP oil spill up there. And then, you know, come down here and now I hit pandemic. And the thing is that the pandemic is like all 3 of those things combined because, you know, like 9/11, there was a total travel shutdown, except there it lasted a week in 9/11. Now, I mean, in some cases, it lasted 30 to 45 days, sometimes longer, depending on the business. With the oil spill, it came in like the unknown of, when's it going to actually hit the shores. And when you look at the financial crash, people looking at their pocketbook and saying, wait a minute, can I afford to go through and do that? So really from a marketing standpoint, it's like, how do we rebound, recover, and then what becomes the new normal? And so we've really had to adjust. And I would suggest that most businesses are now adjusting to what that marketing looks like. And again, the new normal, I think, changes on a daily basis. And so you have to react accordingly based on what you're hearing and seeing in terms of signals out there in the industry. For us, one of the first things we did was, this was related to brighter days ahead. And this was basically something that we were just sending out saying, bottom line is we're all going through a lot right now. We're in this together. There are brighter days ahead. There was no intent of trying to drive business. It was just awareness at that point. We had some, basically everything we were doing was digital because we could take messages up and down. And so that lasted from about mid-April to about mid-June. And then at the end of June, we said, you know what? We're here, we're seeing the signals are the intent to travel is coming back up. So we really need to come back with a campaign that will address that. And this was going to be the new campaign, Welcome Back to Now, let's make time for now. Kind of getting back to, hey, it's time, it's the whole time for us. And we had it in the bag. We had everything created. It was the end of June. It was going to drop right after July 4th. And if everyone remembered, after July 4th, that's when everything shot back up. And for most cases, the intent to travel just started trailing off. So we didn't even go down that road at that point. Then what we started seeing were the signals about how do you show the potential visitor that you're a safe destination? And this really came down to, again, a variety of things, from everything from the physical distancing. And you will hear me say physical distancing because I'm a firm believer that we all need to be social. And so we just need to stay up. We need to stay 6 feet apart when we're in our groups, but we still need to get together. And I think that's an important part, is that, we still need, whether it's through vacation, through travel, being with your friends, we just need to be cautious in what we're doing. And, one element of that is the wearing of the mask, but also the physical distancing. This was interesting in looking at travelers unwilling to visit places because they were not managing the situation well. And in Florida was much higher. And again, this goes back to early July. Florida was not managing that well in the eyes of the traveler as compared to other folks. And so therefore we were seeing that drop off. Again, coming through the care of put into the social distancing, the use of the mask. And this is at the end of, even through the end of July, again, a strong message from the potential travelers. And again, 43% of the travelers express hesitation to travel due to unclear health and safety protocols, or say it's somewhat, 97% say it's somewhat important that a destination follow strict safety guidelines. So that's where we really went through and said, what kind of messaging can we come up with that will help with that? It would build upon the extension of the brighter days ahead. it would be more uplifting, bright, positive, user-friendly, reinforces the health and safety message. And that's where we came up with a campaign called Rise to Shine. And we timed it right before Labor Day. We did, we basically targeted not only locally, but we also targeted Tampa and Orlando, which are typically of our markets where we get business this time of year. It's still running. You have paid media that's running, and it was roughly a total. It's actually about 1.6 million when we get out done with it. But you can see we reached adults in Pinellas County, the larger Tampa DMA, plus Orlando. We reached out to businesses to have them go through and put information up. We worked with chambers and municipalities to help with this messaging. So in this case, you can see we had kits that were able to go through that included face masks and included hand sanitizer and antibacterial wipes. This has probably been the neatest thing. It's one of the things that you can push buttons or pull open doors. Again, trying to provide more of that contactless way of interacting with folks. We had a website that was dedicated. We had dedicated to it. We had buttons that went out. We had window clings. We have our mirror clings. Again, the whole thing is that in order to combat this and portray what was happening, we really had to rise to shine. We also had buses that were branded. In this case here, you had, this was the beach trolley, spread out, beach on, again, trying to go through and show, again, the importance of spreading out and all of the other important things to stay safe. And we also created 2 videos. One was how to revisit responsibly, and this one was Sunshine Steward Part 2, and then up here was Sunshine Steward 1, and this one dealt with being at the beach and making sure that you had your distance of 6 feet. That if you're in groups that you would go through and wear the mask. It was really about being responsible. This one even got into more of, I'm going to go into whether it related to the restaurants, I'm going to an attraction. It even went through and showed some folks going to check in a hotel, but they're wearing their mask when they go in the hotel. There's another one that shows them going to a restaurant wearing their mask, but when they're at the table, the mask is off. And it's more informational than anything else because, again, we're able to point this type of items out to our potential travelers. So currently running, now let me go through and say this. Since all of this, we did, in the very early on, we paused all of our marketing. The only exception that we did is we kept search up. If I'm out there and I really want to go to the beach and I was searching for a place to go, then you would be served an ad. Where before, we would just put things in front of you, again, to a targeted audience. And so that stuff continued. And then what we also did is we looked at a lot more digital stuff so that messaging could change if need be on the fly. So as an example, last year, going into winter, we had bus wraps in New York City. We had the subway in Toronto. We had the metro branded. But again, that if we went to do this year and then something happened, we would not be able to make quick changes to that messaging. So again, a lot of what we're doing is all very digital oriented. Connected TV, just for that is, For anybody that's cut the cable, is there's advertising that we can still reach you, be it Hulu, be it a variety of different ways, but it's still reaching them through that mechanism. We had magazines that we had print ads in. Our Golf to Bay magazine, which goes into newspaper insertions. I got to kind of brag on this one. On this one, we actually got a late start. You know, it was one of those, it was supposed to be out in April, and actually March and April. And due to some delay, it did not get out until late May, early June, which was because, and again, part of that was in state, and it dropped right when we needed it to drop. If it had gone earlier, I think we would have mixed our mark. So, you know, it was one of those, like, thank goodness we were late on that one, because the timing worked out. I think one of the other key things is we still continue to pitch media on stories. And this was all about mural tour with downtown St. Pete. And we pitched it to national media. Here are 3 quotes from media outlets that said, here's one: "I love this idea, but likely be a while before we can send people to Florida editorially." This is from August. Another one: "Super cool, but it's not really a good time to push Florida travel." Another one: "I'm keeping close watch on places that are safe for travel, but Florida on the do not travel list for state of New York and therefore cannot cover at this moment." Goes back to that importance of being able to, you know, show what you're doing in the state, that it is safe for folks, because I think we have all the right stories to tell. It's just, are they going to go through and cover that? Next, we have a whole new point of view, and this is where we're going now. So that when you visit St. Pete Clearwater, every moment is heightened, every color is more vibrant, every interaction more meaningful. St. Pete Clearwater is packed with details that last forever: a touch, a smell, a sound. So we evoke on the things that evoke a visceral response, because sometimes a drop of water can tell more of a story than the whole ocean. This becomes our next creative going out, because we still know the signals are there for the intent to travel. Give you an idea: elevate your senses, dive in completely. Looking at digital ads: sway with the breeze and discover 35 miles of white sand beaches, or embrace the vibrant, discover world-renowned museums. So basically, this campaign, we have starting, so the elections were last week, so it starts next week. And this will be in-state Florida, so Miami, Orlando. We'll also be up in Atlanta. We will be up in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, some of that lower Midwest markets, reaching our intended audience through connected TV, radio, print, digital, a variety of different ways. And this is all to drive business between now and then through the winter. And this would go in through the end of February. You know, and again, I think the looking forward part is, what does that winter begin to look like as compared to previous years? I mean, I think it's a guess, because at this point, you know, we're consistently showing about 25% down. I don't think we're going to get to 100% this year. I think by next year we will, but that all depends upon what happens with the coronavirus, vaccine, no vaccine, feeling of being safe, the economy, all these other things all coming in line. The nice part is that if we can stay where we have been and increase a little bit at a time, that bodes well. That'll bode well for us. This is not a quick recovery. It's not like what we saw after 9/11. It's not even what we saw after the financial crisis in 08, 09. This is, I think, for the travel industry is going to be slow as we go through to bring folks back. So there we go. So I would be happy to answer any questions or expand upon anything else.
Sure. I mean, I always have a bunch of questions, but I'd be glad to hear from some of the people that are on the Zoom call that is our business community. And I certainly want to stay in touch with you as to how we as a chamber with our 5 hotels can, you know, continue to push that message out, that because I think sometimes globally, as go, you know, New York and the things that you see, they think that the entire country is that way from a global standpoint. Europe and the different areas that travel here, we saw that with, you know, red tide and all those different things, and how and maybe a little more locally, as goes Miami-Dade, everybody thinks that the entire state is that way, and I don't know that that's necessarily the case. We kind of get caught up in the shrapnel of they're not doing so good down there with their numbers. Is that safe to say?
That is, which is why, and so let me reiterate one thing. So if I had to look at messaging, is the rise to shine is this underlying message that we can turn up if we need to or turn down if we need to. The other messaging is, you know, just our area overall intended to be more that brand awareness, direct call to action to come visit, and without calling out anybody else in the state. Sure. The other element to it is, again, as the state goes PR wise, then it affects us. And so for us, we need to make sure that we're working with Visit Florida in their messaging as well. Because again, like I said, you know, there was a direct correlation between rising cases, drop in reservations, drop in cases, rise in reservations. So you know that exists. And so, you know, let's, how do we move, how do we go through and make sure we're headed in the right direction with that?
Sure. Any questions from the room? You can unmute yourself.
I have a question. What about the like Airbnb? Are you seeing an uptick in that because people can distance more, or maybe feel more secure being in a private home or condo versus in a hotel?
Actually, if I remember right from one of my slides, and I don't remember the exact percentage, but one of the things where I feel safe was Airbnb. So I still see that happening. You know, even when we took our trip to North Carolina, we were in an Airbnb, not because we felt safer. It's just, you know, we were going to be more central to things that are going on. But it was interesting is we asked to check in early, and our host said, "Hey, I got to make sure the place is cleaned properly before I can let you in." And we're like, "Hey, we're for all that." You know, so again, I think, you know, there are those that are going to choose an Airbnb because they feel that's the best for them and their situation. There's other ones that are like, no, I am hotel 100%. And, you know, the hotel, you know, especially as you get to the major brands, they have very strict standards on their cleaning and what they need to do or not do. And again, I think that's important to let the visitor know that. But great question.
Other questions? Are you seeing, I know before we started this, when we were talking, I spent quite a bit of time out at Clearwater Beach. Why wouldn't I? It's the #1 beach in the area. So are you seeing different types of visitors? Are they you know, tank of gas visitors? Because I can tell you out at Clearwater Beach, and I'm sure you see the others or talk to the other chambers, we are seeing a completely different type of visitor than we're used to seeing.
So that is one of the things that we're seeing overall. And so I'm going to be anxious on our next quarterly profile of our visitor through our research company to say, okay, now compare that to the visitor quarter last year And then what's that difference? There are some subtle changes. And, I think part of that is the average age hasn't changed. Length of stay has changed. In other words, it's gone down versus stayed the same or gone up. Their spending has gone down a little bit. And again, that impacts a number of different businesses. The other aspect of it is, and I don't know how to put a handle to this, is I think the visitor that's out there in some cases is more contentious. In other words, they're going through, and I'm hearing stories from lodging where someone will check in and then they go to check out and they're saying, well, my room was dirty. And wait a minute, you're just now telling us that? Well, but what are you going to do for me? Other ones where, they may go visit an outlet to buy, their beer, but now they're bringing it with them. They're kind of letting their hair down because they've been cooped up. And so they're again, leads to that contentious behavior. So you go through it and have that. I think as well as there's people that normally don't come here, that maybe had the resources to travel and needed to get away, and all of a sudden we're coming here. And so again, led to some, to an audience that now became a first-time visitor, and versus the repeat visitor. There are certain travelers that weren't traveling yet. So if that's our old customer, they may be one of those that says, you know what, I really don't feel comfortable getting away. And there are those out there. Was my one brother who lives in Emerald Isle, North Carolina, hasn't gone anywhere. He just like, yeah, no, I'm cool. In fact, we went to see them and we went out to eat at a restaurant. That was the first time they had actually ate in a restaurant since March. So it depends on the personalities of the folks and what they're willing to do. And there's other people, they're like, I'll travel every single day, every single week, every single month. I don't care. And so it's, you've got both spectrums.
Yeah. I was with Megan from Marriott Courtyard yesterday. We were doing a Chamber TV segment, and they also have the Residence Inn. And it's interesting. I'll have to ask her now that you've instituted those two new words, schoolcation and workcation, because we were talking, I sell real estate. We were talking that she's really seeing an influx of people that need that temporary housing for 2 or 3, 4 weeks. And I was thinking it was because they're selling a house in New York and they're buying a house here and it's not quite ready, which I think is part of it. But it also might be those two words that they're bringing their family and they, want accommodations like the Residence Inn offers them. And so I'll have to dig into that a little bit deeper and see who those visitors actually are. But that probably is the case. If I'm logging in, you don't know where I'm at right now. I could be logged in from anywhere. So.
Well, yeah. As an employer, I don't know that because if I'm smart, I'll put a virtual background so you don't see the beach behind me. But I think what's interesting. So, and I didn't put this on a slide because this is my own opinion because I don't know where it's going. But after 9/11, there was a major change in the travel industry. And that's where your online travel agencies really came into prominence. And after the 08, 09 crash, then the next thing that happened that affected the travel industry was your sharing economy, your Airbnbs, your Ubers of the world. So what's going to change this time? What's going to come out of this that will impact the travel industry? So one element of that could be this: how many people are leaving major cities and coming to places where it's probably more affordable, it fits their lifestyle, so bottom line is they're getting something here. So, and I'll use example, the one gentleman I was telling you about from DC. Well, what if he were to run his business from here And then you got a great airport that now can fly out to wherever you need to go. And we're fortunate we've got 2 of those airports. But all of a sudden now, the family that's going to come visit. So does VFR start to take off? Do you find more pockets of, because people live here, and again, it goes back to working from home versus office, your neighborhoods build up. And so you know, it's like you were talking about your brother, and, you know, he goes 2 blocks to go to his, you know, his convenience store. Well, you walk 6 blocks or whatever to go to your grocery outlet. So it, you know, what's going to change that will impact the travel industry in a way that, you know, changes us? And again, I think the sharing economies and I think your online agencies both were, while some of it was hard to adapt to for some businesses, it has been good for us overall.
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and wrap up. I know everybody's got some things to do. I know from a local economy, of both our local businesses, our retail, our restaurants, obviously the hotels, do you see the events coming back? I know one of the events that we've held here is the Gator Nationals, and in North County, you got the Valspar. I mean, our Gator Nationals brought in people from all over the world and stayed in our hotels. Do you see that ever coming back to the level it was? Because that really affects our local economy. We're a big event. Pinellas County in general is a big, whether it's the boat races, the St. Pete Grand Prix snuck up on me and was here. I found it channel surfing. I didn't even really know that it was going on.
Yeah, well, and you're absolutely correct in terms of the events being a major player or a factor for our community as a whole. I think what we're seeing is people are finding a way to adapt and make them happen. So as an example, Grand Prix still carried it off, but they said we're only going to allow 20,000 people or sell 20,000 tickets. In talking to the Valspar and the PGA, they're moving forward with that event, and they're planning on having it with fans. But yet the LPGA event that's taking place later this month is not having fans. The Clearwater Jazz Festival is happening, but in a very different way because they can't get crowds. And so that, you know, they weren't able to go through and do that. You've got, was it Standing Ovations, who before it's a sand sculpting competition with international sculptors, they're not coming in. And so they adapted for this year until what they say next year, but they're still going to allow people there. What they're doing is they're saying, how can I safely have my event and go through and do that and still put on a great festival or whatever it is, but do it in a safe manner. And so I think there's where you're going through and seeing that the changes.
Yeah, and I think from a chamber standpoint, I know we had, when we tried to pull off an event in November, we didn't do Oktoberfest, but we were going to do like a Novemberfest, a fall festival. We just, from a cost perspective, it wasn't worth the risk for us to do it because you don't know how many people are come, social distancing, you know, no cash exchange. It was just too cumbersome for us to do it and too big of a financial risk. So hopefully that will start to relax as vaccines, you know, come available and people start to feel more comfortable traveling and the messaging gets out. I think that's more important, probably.
Yeah, there was again, same group of folks that do the research. They just did something about live events and how do travelers feel about live events. There's a festival in Louisville that we've gone to the last 3 years. It's a music festival tied around bourbon. That's really good. I like that idea. And you know, and they would have 25,000 people. Yeah. So how do you have that event? How do you go through and do that to where you're still able to enjoy it? And they do 4 festivals in 4 weekends, and each one of them have 25,000 people. And that's now gone. That's 1 million people that no longer are going there because that event isn't happening. And so how do you put those on, and what does that begin to look like? And I think that'll be the next thing. I do know of one thing I think was really cool. And I was talking with the Florida Orchestra yesterday, and you may already know this, but they're actually live streaming their concerts. And so you can go and get a ticket in person. There's limited seating, and here's the cost. You can live stream, and here's the cost. So, it's just doing it differently. And it's that adaptation that you have to look at, going forward, and how will that work?
Are we going to, last question. Does anybody else in the room have a question? I feel like I hog it all the time, but I love this stuff. I love the analytics and the numbers and the projections. But if there isn't, are we going to have a full house at the Super Bowl this year? What are you hearing?
Super Bowl. What's that? No, I'm kidding. Yeah. And I was on a call earlier this week, and again, a writer came out and said this is what they were hearing. The NFL has not confirmed that. The host committee has said they're working with the NFL, and they'll continue to work with local officials. But they see the number of people at games right now in the NFL increasing. And so it's going up. And, bottom line is, it may not be a full 75,000 people, but, if we're able to go and get, I'm making this up, 50,000, would you consider that a success? And especially if the Bucs are playing in it, then I would say it's even a bigger success. Yeah, I like that. I like the way you think. Hopefully you project the football better than you did the financial component. So well, I appreciate it. Is there any more? I can't see everybody. I still haven't figured out how to work all these Zoom things, but if there aren't any more, and I'm gonna once this thing compresses, I'm gonna share it with all of our hotels and let them know. And Steve, if there's any way that we can, with our business community and our hotels and the Upper Tampa Bay Chamber, get messages out, or so we're all on the same page, just certainly let us know, and we'll be glad to share that message. We have all the swag that you guys, that you were talking about. So definitely let us know. And if anybody on this call has any questions, feel free to send them to me, and I'll get them to Steve, and we can go from there. So hopefully 2021 is a different year, better year. As I said to staff yesterday, just making sure they were all okay with the storm and everything. I said, here we go with a hurricane at the end of hurricane season. We've had a virus, a pandemic. I'm working on a plan right now to combat locusts and volcanoes, because there's 6 weeks left in this year to get those in, because in 2021 we're not going to deal with any of this. That's all I'm going to say. It's not going to be a zombie apocalypse, you don't think? So I think. Well, I don't know. If they travel and spend money, maybe we'll take it.
Thanks so much, and I appreciate it, and we'll be in touch. Thanks, Steve.
All right, that sounds great. Bye, everybody.
Bye.